The Galactic Concord had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 47 species worked together under ancient treaties and old agreements. They traded goods, shared knowledge, and kept the peace through a simple understanding. War was too expensive for anyone to start. The strong species led, the weak species followed, and everyone accepted their place in the order of things. When humanity sent their first ship beyond the solar system in 2187, the Concord noticed. They always noticed new species. It was their job to bring newcomers into the fold, to teach them the rules, and to make sure they understood their place at the bottom of the ladder. The Valkyrie were chosen to make first contact. They were an ancient species, covered in shimmering green and gold scales, with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Their ambassador, a being called Dexanol, traveled to Earth's solar system with a fleet of diplomatic vessels. He carried with him the standard terms that every new species received. Admiral. Catherine Cole met him on a space station orbiting Earth. She was a woman of 53 years, with gray streaking through her dark hair and lines on her face that spoke of hard decisions and sleepless nights. Behind her stood Captain Daniel Price, a tall man with calm eyes, and Commander Lisa Grant, whose red hair was pulled back in a tight braid. They represented the Earth Defense Force, humanity's military arm in space. The meeting room was simple. A long table, chairs designed for human bodies, and a window that showed Earth spinning slowly below. The Valkyrie ambassador looked at the blue planet with something like amusement. "Your world is beautiful," Dexanol said. His voice was smooth, translated by machines into perfect English. "It would be a shame if anything happened to it." Catherine did not smile. "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" "It is a fact. The galaxy is dangerous for those without protection. The Concord offers that protection. In exchange, we ask only for cooperation." He placed a data tablet on the table. Catherine picked it up and read the terms. One colony world for humanity. No voting rights in the Concord for 500 years. All ships to be inspected by Concord officials. All technology to be monitored and controlled. Expansion limited to approved systems only. She read it twice to make sure she understood. Then she set the tablet down. "These terms are unacceptable." Dexanol made a sound that humans would later learn was laughter. It was a clicking, hissing noise that came from deep in his throat. Young species often say this. You will accept them in time. You have no choice in the matter. We always have a choice. Do you? The ambassador leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying her face. "Let me explain something to you, Admiral. The Concord has 47 member species. We have millions of warships. Our technology is thousands of years ahead of yours. Your little fleet of 200 vessels is nothing to us. Less than nothing. We could destroy your entire civilization in a single afternoon, and the rest of the galaxy would not even notice." Catherine listened without expression. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "I understand," she said. "You believe we are weak. You believe we have nothing that could threaten you. You believe we will bow down and accept whatever scraps you offer us, because that is the truth." No, Catherine stood up from her chair. Daniel and Lisa stood with her. "That is what you want to believe. That is what every species that came before us believed. But here is what you don't understand about humans, Ambassador. We don't give up. We don't bow down. And we never, ever bluff." Dexanol waved a scaled hand dismissively. "Bold words from a primitive species? We're giving you one warning," Catherine continued. "Leave humanity alone. Grant us fair terms. Treat us as equals in your Concord, or what?" Catherine smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something that others did not. "Or you will discover why every predator on our world learned to fear us. We were not the fastest animals. We were not the strongest. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. But we became the dominant species on Earth because we learned to think, to plan, and to never stop fighting until we won. You cannot fight the entire galaxy. We don't have to fight the entire galaxy. We just have to fight you." The ambassador stood as well. He towered over the humans, his scales catching the light. "This meeting is over. You will receive our terms again in 1 month. I suggest you use that time to reconsider your position. And I suggest you use that time to prepare for what comes next. The Valkyrie delegation left Earth's solar system that day. Vexenal filed his report with the Concord Council, describing humanity as aggressive, but ultimately harmless. He recommended a show of force if they continued to resist. The Council agreed. They had dealt with difficult species before. They always came around eventually. 3 weeks passed. Catherine Cole spent those weeks in meetings with Earth's government leaders, with military commanders, and with scientists who had been working on secret projects for 20 years. Humanity had known this day would come. They had been preparing for it since the first radio signals from alien civilizations were detected decades ago. Are we ready? The president asked her in their final meeting. We're as ready as we'll ever be, Catherine replied. The question is whether we're willing to do what needs to be done. They'll never see us as equals if we don't.
Oh.
They won't. On the 21st day, after the meeting with Dexenol, a fleet of human ships appeared in the Valkyrie colony system of Threshkull. The colony had 17 million inhabitants. It had orbital defense platforms, a small military garrison, and all the confidence of a species that had never known defeat. 6 hours later, Threshkull went dark. Every satellite was destroyed. Every ship was reduced to floating debris. Every power system on the planet was disabled. But not a single Valkyrie was killed. Instead, they found themselves transported to an unfamiliar world. A planet that humans had secretly prepared for exactly this purpose. 17 million confused, frightened aliens, alive and unharmed. But completely removed from their home, the message was clear. Humanity could strike anywhere. Humanity could defeat any defense. And humanity had chosen mercy when they could have chosen destruction. Admiral Catherine Cole broadcast on every frequency the Concorde used. We told you, she said. We warned you. This is not a bluff. This is a promise. The people of Threshkull are alive. They can be returned when you are ready to negotiate fairly. But understand this. What we did to one colony, we can do to any of your worlds. What we did to one system, we can do to any system in the galaxy. The choice is yours. The galaxy had believed humanity was bluffing. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Commander Nathan Perry had served in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. He had rescued colonists from dying space stations. He had once talked down a broken computer system that had gone crazy and taken over a mining ship. But nothing in his life had prepared him for what he saw now. His ship, the Relentless, hung in space above the planet Threshkull. Through the viewing window, he could see the world below. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds drifting across the surface. It looked peaceful. It looked normal. But every city was dark. Every orbital platform was wreckage. Every ship that had tried to defend the colony was now scattered metal floating in the void. Lieutenant Sandra Mills sat at her control station, her face pale as she read the data on her screen. All life signs confirmed, Commander. The entire population has been moved to the secondary location. No deaths reported. Nathan felt his stomach twist. 17 million people. We moved 17 million people in 6 hours. Yes, sir. Admiral Cole's orders were specific. Remove the population, disable all technology, leave the planet intact but empty. He turned away from the window. The Relentless was the newest ship in the human fleet, built with technology that the Concorde did not know existed. It could move faster than any alien vessel. It carried weapons that could cut through shields like paper, and it was just one ship among many. The Concorde will respond, he said quietly. They have to respond. That's what the Admiral is counting on, sir. The response came faster than anyone expected. Within hours of the news reaching the Concorde Council, a war fleet was assembled. 300 warships from 12 different species gathered at a staging point and then jumped toward Earth's solar system. They expected to find a primitive species hiding behind their single planet. They expected fear, panic, and a quick surrender. They found the Earth defense grid instead. For 20 years, while the Concorde laughed at humanity's small fleet, humans had been building something else. They had placed weapon platforms in asteroid fields, hidden among rocks that looked like ordinary space debris. They had launched stealth satellites that drifted silently through the solar system. Armed with weapons that should not have existed for another 1,000 years, they had turned every moon, every asteroid, every piece of floating rock into part of a vast network of death. Admiral Catherine Cole watched the enemy fleet arrive from her command ship, the Liberty. She sat in her chair on the bridge, surrounded by officers who had trained for this moment their entire careers. Captain Daniel Price stood at her right side. Commander Lisa Grant coordinated the defense grid from her station. 300 ships, Daniel reported. Mixed fleet. Valkyrie, Kethra, Shal, and others. Their foe. Airming into attack formation. Let them come, Catherine said. They need to see what happens. The Concorde fleet moved toward Earth with the confidence of beings who had never lost a battle. Their weapons charged. Their shields powered up. They sent a final message demanding immediate surrender. Catherine did not bother to reply. The first wave of hidden weapons activated. When the enemy fleet crossed the orbit of Neptune, missiles launched from asteroids that had seemed dead and empty. Energy beams fired from satellites that had been invisible moments before. The Concorde ships found themselves under attack from every direction at once. Admiral Bextel of the Valkyrie commanded the fleet. He had conquered a dozen worlds in his long career. He had never seen anything like this. Where are they firing from? I need targeting solutions. We can't find them, Admiral. The weapons appear and disappear too quickly. Then find their main fleet. Destroy their ships. Their fleet is not engaging, Admiral. They're letting the automated defenses do the work. Bextel watched in horror as ship after ship in his fleet exploded or went dark. The human weapons were precise, deadly, and everywhere. His forces shot back at nothing, hitting empty space while death rained down from hidden sources. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 218 Concorde ships had been destroyed or disabled. 11 survivors fled back toward Concorde space, their crews in shock. 8, their confidence shattered. On Earth, celebrations erupted. Humanity had won its first battle against the galaxy's ruling power. But Catherine Cole did not celebrate. She knew this was only the beginning. Send the message, she ordered. Her face appeared on screens across the galaxy, transmitted on every frequency the Concorde used. She spoke calmly, without anger, without triumph. We warned you, she said. You did not listen. The people of Threshkul are alive and safe. They will be returned when you are ready to talk fairly. But you sent a fleet to destroy us, so let me be clear about what happens next. We can do this to any fleet you send. We can do what we did to Threshkal to any of your worlds. We do not want war. We want peace. Real peace, built on respect and fairness. Send diplomats, not warships, and we will talk. The Concorde Council received her message in stunned silence. For 12,000 years, they had maintained order through overwhelming force. No species had ever challenged them and won. No species had ever been able to strike at their colonies and defeat their fleets. But humans had done both and less. Then a month, emergency meetings were called. Accusations flew back and forth. The Valkyrie demanded more ships, more weapons, total war against the humans. Other species were not so sure. They had seen the recordings from the battle. They had watched 300 warships die against an enemy they could not even see. Perhaps, suggested one delegate carefully, we should consider negotiation. The Valkyrie representative was outraged. With primitives? With animals who attack without warning? They gave warning. We ignored it. They are testing our resolve. If we show weakness now, every young species in the galaxy will think they can challenge us. The argument continued for days. Meanwhile, across the Concorde, other species watched and waited. Species who had been forced to accept unfair terms. Species who had been held back for centuries. Species who had long resented the way the Valkyrie and their allies controlled everything. They saw humans stand up to the most powerful force in the galaxy. They saw humans win. And they began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the old order was not as unbreakable as they had been told. On Earth, Admiral Catherine Cole met with her officers to plan the next phase. "They'll try again," she said. "They have to. If they don't, they lose all credibility. So we keep fighting?" Daniel asked. "No, we keep demonstrating. There's a difference. We show them what we can do without destroying what doesn't need to be destroyed. We prove that we're stronger than they thought, but we're not monsters. Eventually, they'll have to accept that the only way forward is through real negotiation. And if they don't?" Catherine looked out the window at Earth, the blue planet that had produced a species stubborn enough to challenge the stars. "Then we keep going until they have no choice." Ambassador George Walsh had never wanted to be a diplomat. When he was young, he dreamed of being a historian, spending his days studying ancient civilizations that had turned to dust long ago. Dead empires were safe. They did not argue back. They did not threaten war. But humanity needed people who understood how alien minds worked. And George had written the most detailed study of the galactic concord ever produced by a human scholar. So instead of reading about history, he found himself making it. The meeting room on the neutral station was cold. The Concorde had chosen the temperature to make humans uncomfortable. A small display of power that George pretended not to notice. Across the table sat representatives from a dozen species. Strange bodies and stranger faces all turned toward him with expressions. He was still learning to read. The Kethra delegate spoke first. She was an insect-like creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to look in every direction at once. Her body trembled as she talked, though George could not tell if it was anger or fear. "You must understand what you have done," she said. "The peace is held for 12,000 years. 12,000 years without major war. You have destroyed that in a single month." George kept his voice calm and steady. "Your peace was built on control. You decided who could grow and who had to stay small. You decided who got good planets and who got the leftovers. You decided who had power and who had to obey. That's not peace. That's a prison. It kept order. It kept you comfortable. It kept the strong species in charge and everyone else afraid to complain." The room fell silent. George could feel the tension, the ancient resentments that bubbled just below the surface of every interaction. The Concorde liked to pretend it was a partnership of equals, but everyone knew the truth. Some species ruled, others served, and the rules were written by those at the top. "The Valkyrie controlled this council for 3,000 years, George continued. "They decided the terms. They counted the votes. They punished anyone who disagreed too loudly. How many of you accepted that because you had no other choice? How many of you watched your people suffer while the Valkyrie took the best of everything?" A large, fur-covered being stirred at the far end of the table. This was Rethkel, representative of the Threll species. His people had been forced to accept minor status in the Concorde for millennia, their colonies limited to cold, harsh worlds that no one else wanted. "You speak dangerous words, human," Rethkel said. His voice was deep and rumbling. "The Valkyrie will not tolerate such talk. The Valkyrie just lost 300 warships trying to punish us for similar talk. Their colony of Threshkull is empty. Their people relocated to a planet they've never seen. Maybe it's time to stop worrying about what the Valkyrie will tolerate. What are you offering?" Another delegate, a being made of crystalline structures that caught the light, spoke for the first time. These were the Vox, ancient and mysterious, who rarely involved themselves in Concorde politics. George leaned forward. "Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to replace the Valkyrie at the top of the ladder. We want to break the ladder entirely. A new system, fair treaties, real representation. Every species with an equal voice, regardless of how old they are or how many ships they have." "Pretty words," the Kethra delegate said. "But words are easy. What happens when you are the strong ones? What happens when humans have the biggest fleet and the most colonies? Will you still believe in equality then?" "That's a fair question. I can only tell you what we've done so far. We could have killed 17 million Valkyrie on Threshkull. We didn't. Could have destroyed the fleet that came to punish us. Instead, we let 11 ships escape to tell the story. We're trying to show you that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty." The meeting continued for hours. George answered questions, deflected accusations, and slowly planted seeds of doubt in minds that had accepted the old order for centuries. Not everyone was convinced. Some delegates were too afraid of the Valkyrie. Others simply could not imagine a galaxy without the Concord's strict hierarchy. But some listened. Some remembered the wrongs their people had suffered. Some began to wonder if there might be another way. After the meeting ended, George returned to his ship and sent a report back to Earth. Admiral Catherine Cole read it in her office, her face unreadable. Daniel Price asked. "Slow progress," she replied. "The Concorde is built on fear. Every species is afraid of what happens if they step out of line. We have to show them that the thing they feared, the collapse of the old order, isn't as terrible as they were told. How do we do that? We keep winning. We keep being merciful when we win. And we reach out to every species that's been pushed down by the Valkyrie and their friends. We offer them something better." Back on the neutral station, George sat alone in his quarters, looking out at the stars. He thought about the Concorde. 12,000 years of history balanced on threats and compromises. It had worked after a fashion. The galaxy had not destroyed itself. Species that might have gone to war instead traded and negotiated. But it had also crushed countless dreams. Entire civilizations had been held back, their potential wasted. Becca used the powerful species feared competition. Billions of beings had lived and died under a system that told them they were lesser, that they did not deserve more, that they should accept their place and be grateful. Humanity refused to accept that. Humans looked at the stars and saw possibilities, not limits. They saw a galaxy that could be better, fairer, more free. George did not know if they would succeed. The forces against them were vast and ancient, but he knew they had to try. The alternative, bowing down, accepting the scraps, becoming just another controlled species, was unthinkable. His communication device buzzed. A message from one of the delegates sent through secure channels. The Thrall wished to talk further. In private. "Can you meet?" George smiled. One by one, the cracks in the old order were spreading. One by one, species were beginning to imagine something different. He typed his response. "I can meet whenever you're ready." The unraveling had begun. Captain Rebecca Torres had joined the Earth Defense Force because she wanted to see the stars. She had grown up in a small town, looking at the night sky and dreaming of distant worlds. Now she commanded the diplomatic ship Horizon. Her mission was unlike anything she had imagined as a child. She was building an alliance that would change. The galaxy, the Shen, were first on her list. They were an aquatic species, graceful beings with flowing fins and skin that shimmered like water in sunlight. 2,000 years ago, the Valkyrie had confined them to a single star system, claiming they were disruptive to Concorde stability. In truth, the Valkyrie had feared their growing influence and moved quickly to limit their expansion. Rebecca met with the Shen Council in a pressurized chamber beneath their ocean homeworld. The water was warm and filled with bioluminescent creatures that drifted past like living stars. Across from her, separated by a transparent barrier, Counselor Tidesinger watched with eyes that held centuries of patience. "You defeated the Valkyrie fleet," Tidesinger said. Her voice was musical, translated by machines into English. "But the Concorde has 1,000 such fleets. 10,000. You have won a battle, not a war." "You're right," Rebecca agreed. "We can't fight the entire Concorde by ourselves. That's why we're here, to ask us to fight for you. To offer you a partnership. A real partnership, where your voice matters as much as ours." Tidesinger's fins rippled with what might have been amusement. "The Valkyrie offered us partnership once. It came with chains attached." "I know your history, Counselor. I've read about the Treaty of Depths, how they promised you expansion rights and then took them away the moment you agreed to join. Humanity doesn't work that way. We don't make promises we can't keep, and we don't break promises once made." Bold words. The Valkyrie also spoke bold words. Rebecca reached into her bag and pulled out a data crystal. She held it up so Tidesinger could see it clearly. "This contains the coordinates of 12 habitable water worlds in unclaimed space. Good worlds, with deep oceans and stable climates. If the Shen join our coalition, These worlds are yours. No conditions. No restrictions. Your people can expand, grow, and build whatever future you want. And in return, your support in the assembly we're building, your ships, if war comes, your voice, speaking for a new kind of galaxy.
I'd singer.
Studied the crystal for a long moment. Around her, other Shen counselors murmured to each other in their own language. Rebecca waited. She had learned that patience was essential in diplomacy. You ask us to trust you, Tidesinger finally said. Trust is not something we give easily. Not anymore. I understand. Trust is earned, not given. But someone has to take the first step. The Velcari have controlled this galaxy for too long. They've kept species like yours down, afraid of what you might become if you were free. Humanity is offering a chance to change that. A real chance, not just words. The Shen deliberated for 3 days. Rebecca stayed on their world, meeting with different factions, answering questions, showing them what humanity had to offer. She showed them recordings of the Battle of Sol, proof that the Velcari could be beaten. She showed them the relocated population of Threshkal, proof that humans could win without unnecessary destruction. On the 4th day, Tidesinger summoned her back to the council chamber. The Shen will join your coalition, she announced. But we will be watching, Captain Torres. If humanity proves to be just another species seeking power, we will not stay. Fair enough. That's all we ask, a chance to prove ourselves. From the Shen, Rebecca traveled to the Threll homeworld. Ambassador George Walsh had prepared the ground, and the fur-covered giants were ready to talk. Their resentment of the Velcari ran deep. Centuries of insults and limitations festering like old wounds. Rethkal met her in a great hall carved from mountain stone. His people surrounded him. Thousands of Threll gathered to hear what the humans would offer. We have watched your progress, Rethkal said, his deep voice echoing through the hall. You have done what no species has done in 12,000 years. You have made the Velcari afraid. We've shown them they're not invincible, Rebecca replied. That's all. Fear is just the beginning. What comes next is what matters. And what comes next? A new order, not controlled by the Velcari or anyone else. A galaxy where every species has equal rights, equal voice, equal opportunity. The Threll have been pushed aside for too long. Join us and help build something better. The Threll voted that same day. The decision was unanimous. After the Threll came the Vox, the crystalline beings who had watched the Concord for millennia without taking sides. They joined because they believed the old system was dying anyway, and they wanted to help shape what came next. Then came the Kaldrani, methane-breathing creatures who had been restricted to gas giants at the edge of known space. Then the Nereith, the Silkar, the Quinn, and a dozen others. Each had their own reasons for joining. Some wanted revenge against the Velcari. Some genuinely believed in humanity's vision of equality. Some simply saw which way the wind was blowing and wanted to be on the winning side. Admiral Catherine Cole tracked the coalition's growth from her command ship. Lieutenant Commander Paul Stark brought her updates every day, his tablet filled with numbers and names. 40 species now, he reported. The Concord is down to 31 full members. At least half of those remaining are wavering.
How?
What about the Velcari? Still demanding unconditional surrender. Still insisting they'll destroy Earth. Their High Council has called for total war. Catherine nodded slowly. She had expected this. The Velcari were too proud to accept defeat, too used to getting their way. They would fight until they couldn't fight anymore. Then we need to make one more demonstration, she said. Something that ends this permanently. The homeworld. No, we don't destroy. We never destroy unless we have no other choice. But we need to show them that their entire way of life is vulnerable. Every secret base they think is hidden. Every weapon they believe no one knows about. Every lie they've told themselves about their own power. Catherine turned to face the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Velcari were preparing for war. They were gathering ships, manufacturing weapons, planning revenge. They believed they could still win. They were wrong. For 20 years, while the Concord laughed at humanity's primitive technology, human intelligence agents had been working. They had infiltrated Velkari networks. They had mapped every defense system, every military installation, every hidden project. They knew secrets that even most Velkari did not know. It's time to show them what we've learned, Catherine said. Prepare the fleet. We're going to pay the Velkari homeworld a visit. The Velkari homeworld was called Velkar Prime, and it was one of the most beautiful planets in the known galaxy. Purple forests covered 3 continents, their strange trees reaching toward a sky that glowed orange at sunset. Silver oceans teemed with life that had evolved over millions of years. Cities that had stood for 10,000 years rose from the landscape like monuments to power and permanence the Velkari had built there. Civilization on the belief that they were special, chosen, better than other species. Their ancestors had been among the founders of the Galactic Concord, and every generation since had been taught that leadership was their birthright. Now, as Admiral Catherine Cole's fleet appeared in their sky, that belief was about to be tested. Supreme Counselor Asheville stood in the Grand Chamber, surrounded by his advisors and military commanders. The chamber was ancient, its walls covered with the history of Velkari glory. Great victories, conquered enemies, treaties that had bent other species to their will, all of it recorded in gleaming metal and glowing crystal. Asheville demanded. His scales had lost some of their luster with age, but his eyes were still sharp. General Rechthal's voice trembled as he spoke. 47 human ships have entered our system. They are holding position near the outer planets. Only 47? We have orbital defense platforms, ground-based weapons, the hidden installations beneath the oceans. Activate everything. Show them that our homeworld is not another Threshkall. Rechtal hesitated. Supreme Counselor, we have tried. What do you mean tried? Nothing is responding. Our orbital platforms have gone dark. Our ground-based systems report critical failures. Even the deep ocean installations are offline. The general paused, his face showing the kind of fear that Velkar were not supposed to feel. They have done something to our defenses, Supreme Counselor. All of them, simultaneously. Asheville stared at him, unable to comprehend what he was hearing. The Velkari defense network was the most advanced in the galaxy. It had taken centuries to build. It had layers upon layers of security, and it had all failed at once. A screen flickered to life in the chamber. Admiral Catherine Cole's face appeared, transmitted from her ship in orbit. This is not an attack, she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Your weapons are disabled, but your people are safe. Your cities are intact. We have done nothing that cannot be undone. We are proving a point. How? Asheville whispered. How is this possible? Catherine continued as if she had heard him. For 20 years, while you dismissed us as primitives, we studied you. We infiltrated your networks. We mapped your weaknesses. We learned every secret you thought you had hidden. Your deep ocean weapons. Your doomsday devices. Your emergency protocols. We know all of it, and we have disabled all of it. The chamber erupted in chaos. Advisors shouted at each other. Military commanders demanded explanations that no one could give. But Asheville remained silent, his ancient eyes fixed on the human woman's face. You could destroy us, he said quietly. Why don't you? Because that's not who we are. We didn't come here to conquer you. We came here to show you that the age of control is over. You cannot threaten species into submission anymore. You cannot hold the galaxy together through fear. It's time for something new. 3 days later, Ambassador George Walsh arrived on Velkar. Prime, he was escorted by a delegation that included representatives from all 47 species of the human coalition. Shen and Thorell walked beside him. Vox crystals floated overhead. Kaldrani in their environmental suits stood at the back. It was a message without words. The galaxy had changed, and the Velkari were the last to accept it. George faced the defeated council in the same grand chamber where Velkari leaders had ruled for millennia. You wanted to know our terms, he said. Here they are. The Galactic Concord is dissolved. In its place, We proposed the Galactic Assembly. One species, one vote. No permanent council members. No privileged positions. Every species equal under law. Ashvel's scales rippled with something that might have been anger or despair. You cannot simply erase 12,000 years of history. We're not erasing it. We're learning from it. Your concord kept the peace through fear and control. It worked for a while, but it created resentment. It created inequality. It created the conditions that allowed us to tear it apart in a single month. George stepped forward, looking directly into Ashvel's ancient eyes. We're offering you something better. A peace built on fairness instead of force. A galaxy where every species has a voice, where disputes are settled through negotiation instead of threats. It won't be perfect. We'll argue, disagree, have conflicts, but they'll be honest conflicts, resolved through honest means. And if we refuse? George smiled slightly. You've seen what we can do. You've also seen what we chose not to do. We could have destroyed Threskull. We could have destroyed this world. Instead, we demonstrated our power and offered you a choice. That's who humanity is. We don't bluff, but we also don't destroy what can be saved. He extended his hand, the human gesture of agreement. Join us, George said. Help us build something new. Your experience, your knowledge, your history, it doesn't have to be thrown away. It can be part of what comes next if you're willing to share rather than control. Ashvel looked at the offered hand for a long time. He thought about his ancestors, who had founded an empire. He thought about his children, who would inherit whatever he decided now. He thought about 12,000 years of Valkyrie supremacy. And he thought about the 47 human ships in orbit that could end it all, but mostly, he thought about the human woman who could have destroyed his world and chose not to. Slowly, he reached out with his own scaled hand and grasped the human's fingers. You are a terrifying species, Ashvel said. Only when we have to be. 6 months later, the Galactic Assembly held its first session. 312 species attended, more than had ever gathered in one place in the history of the galaxy. They came from worlds of water and worlds of fire, from ancient civilizations and young ones, from species that had been enemies for millennia. Humanity held no special position. They claimed no privileges. They asked for nothing except what they asked for. Everyone, a seat at the table, a voice in the conversation, a chance to be heard. The debates were long and sometimes heated. Old grudges surfaced, new disagreements emerged. But for the first time, every species had equal standing. For the first time, the small and weak could speak without fear of punishment from the great and powerful. When the ancient Valkyrie delegate rose to suggest that certain species were too primitive to vote, Admiral Catherine Cole stood to respond. She spoke quietly, without anger. That kind of thinking is exactly what we fought against. Every species here has something to offer. Every voice matters. That's the galaxy we're building now. The motion failed, 298 to 14, and for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy began to know a different kind of peace. Not the silence of oppression, not the stillness of fear, but the lively, chaotic, sometimes frustrating peace of equals working together. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was better than what came before. Humanity had looked at the stars and refused to accept that some species deserved more than others. They had torn apart an unjust peace and built a foundation for a fair one. They had proven that strength and mercy could exist together. The galaxy had believed. Humans were bluffing. They never made that mistake again.